Hello and welcome to Crimewatch. We've had no fewer than 10 results since our last programme, including cases of rape and murder. We'll have details later, but it's proof that just one call to us can often be enough to catch the people responsible. Let's hope that we do as well tonight. As always, we're live and detectives from across the UK are right here waiting to take your calls. Coming up, the robbers who took on a family business wearing gimp masks like these. Tonight, we need names. Here's what happened.
Where's your money? Where's your safe? Where's your money? And as well as some of the UK's most wanted, I'm after a bunch of football thugs who kicked a police officer to within an inch of his life. It was caught on camera. Take a look at this. The officer was lucky to survive, and later he joins us here in the studio.
And the story of how detectives solved a triple murder of a mother and her 2 children. Within days, the killer took the high-risk strategy of handing himself in. He threw down the gauntlet to police saying, "Here I am, prove it was me." But it was quite a challenge, but they did prove it, and later I'll tell you how.
But first, a case dating back 30 years to January 1979. It was the murder of this lady here, Linda Farrow. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking a case of this age is unlikely to be solved all these years later. The reality is, however, that we have a lot of success with so-called cold cases. Over time, allegiances change, and people with answers feel able to share what they know. Certainly, if anyone needs any incentive, there is now a 20,000 quid reward on this one. What makes this crime all the more tragic is that Linda was heavily pregnant at the time. Let's hope someone watching tonight is prepared to come forward and shed light on who's behind it all. Rav's been to retrace the mystery footprints left in the snow by the killer.
I was almost level with the front door when I heard a noise. It sounded sort of like children squealing or screaming. I thought it was a child chasing another child and then trying to escape out the front door, and then one of them catching up with them before they could get out the door and then falling against each other and slamming it.
The end of 1978 and early 79 was a grim time. Unions throughout the country went on strike, leaving roads ungritted, rubbish uncollected. It was the winter of discontent. Heavy snow lingered for months, making it one of the most memorable winters in history. But for the people here in Woodford Green, it became unforgettable for a completely different reason.
Mummy, do we have to go to school today?
Yes, you do, darling.
But it's perfect to make snowmen.
Oh, I know, but that's no reason for you not to go to school.
Today they forced their way through the remaining half-mile of drift. Even by local standards, the snow was extraordinary.
Linda had split from her husband the previous year and was now in a new relationship. They lived together and were expecting a child.
I was only 8, so, you know, she was my mum and she was lovely, she was stunning. I don't have any memories of any unhappiness at all. See, I missed my dad, as all young children do. They never like going for a breakup, but as far as breakups went, it wasn't, you know, we still used to see my dad. And then, obviously, once we found out she was pregnant, I remember the day that they told us, and we was absolutely over the moon.
We'd never had a cross word, let me tell you that. She was a good kid, no trouble, very feeling for people. And anyone who met her liked her. She was a kind, loving little girl.
Although this was 30 years ago, we have a clear picture of what happened that day.
Well, she came round to me and I'd finished getting ready and off we went down to the Dalston Market. We see the shoe shop with a salon.
Oh, Mum, what about those?
Oh, yes, yes. Right,
Yeah, try them on.
Try them on. Lovely.
Oh, they are, aren't they?
Right, you've got the shoes.
Mhm.
Anything else you need before you go home?
No, I shouldn't really. I've already spent so much. And I've got so much to do as well. I've got to do the ironing, I've got to take all the sandwich down and all that before I even pick the girls up. All right then, Mum.
All right. Perhaps we'll meet up over the weekend.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
Darling.
I love you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye. Just kissed me there on the side of the face, and off she went along Kingsland High Street. She said going down to her partner, and she carried on to down to Bethnal Green Road where he had the store.
Great. How's your morning been?
Oh, it's been great. Been out with Mum and bought some shoes and had a nice cup of tea and a chat.
Is your mum all right?
Yeah, she's fine.
How's Bump doing?
Oh, very well. Anyway, I better go. I've got so much to do before I go and get the girls. Bye. Bye. Hello, Linda speaking. Oh, hello. No, I'm afraid he's down at the market. Oh, right, yeah, he did mention that you were going to go down there today. All right then. Bye. She didn't arrive to pick us up from school, as she'd said, as I'd left in the morning, you know, I'll see you at 3:30. And we waited and waited because I wasn't allowed to cross the main road, so we waited till I think everyone had gone. I was worried, as you do as a child, if one of your parents don't turn up, then you do have that horrible sick feeling in your stomach that something's happened because they're never not there.
Police put the time of death somewhere between 2:40 and 3 p.m. because there were 2 phone calls. One was answered and one wasn't. The first clue's here, a clear set of footprints leading up to the house. Interestingly, there's no footprints leaving the building, and that's because the killer left via the back door. There's no sign of forced entry. Did she know her killer? Did she let him in?
I remember as I turned into the driveway, just seeing these massive footprints in the snow, and her car was there, so I knew obviously she was in. I just went straight to the front door and knocked and knocked and didn't hear anything, and then I decided to look through the letterbox.
At the time of her brutal murder, Linda was heavily pregnant. Her killer pulled back her head and slit her throat.
And there she was. And the knife was next to her.
Eyewitnesses saw a white car speeding off near the address. Was it of any significance? Were you the driver?
And I just didn't know why or how someone could do that. What could she have done? What could she have done? Pregnant, who could do that to a pregnant lady?
It's not a day or a night goes by I don't think about And I only wish I'd been there to help her. And I wasn't. I wasn't there to help her when she needed me.
Why was Linda Farrow murdered? Was it an opportunist? A contract killing? Was she killed by someone she knew? Tonight we need the truth.
So brutal and so sad. I'm joined now by DCI Rebecca Hamilton. Thanks for joining us, Rebecca. 8 and 11 those little girls were when they found their mother lying in the hallway. Just a truly devastating, appalling crime.
Yes, it was. Linda was a young mother expecting her third child, subjected to an absolutely brutal and vicious attack.
So we call this a cold case because, as we've seen, it's 30 years old. I mean, what are the chances of you and your team solving this 30 years on?
Well, circumstances change over time, loyalties and allegiances change. We really hope that someone who perhaps didn't have the courage or wasn't able to come forward at the time might now be able to come forward and tell us what happened.
Okay, do you get the feeling that Linda knew her killer?
We really don't know what the motive for this murder was. She may have known them. It may have been somebody, a random attack or a contract killer. We really don't know.
And what do you reckon about Linda's ex? He was not at all happy. We know that she had started a new life, was having a baby with a new partner.
No, that was obviously a consideration for us, but he has since died, and it may be that someone can come forward now and tell us whether he was involved or not.
Okay, interestingly, her ex didn't have a white car though, this car that was at the scene and sped away. Tell us more about that.
Yes, there was a white, possibly a Ford, seen speeding away from the area at the time. We don't know whether that was connected with the actual crime or whether it was a witness. We'd really like the driver to come forward.
Now, as we saw, it was a snowy day. What else do you have to go on in terms of prints and so on?
We know that the killer wore monkey boots and left some distinctive footprints in the snow. We also have some forensic evidence, but what we really need is a name to go with that evidence.
Okay, Rebecca, thanks very much. And we must tell people, actually, there's a £20,000 reward. You can see more about the terms of that reward on our website this evening. Might seem like a long shot, but somebody watching may have the answers that the family and the police desperately need. If that's you, then please do the right thing and call us. The number is right there on the screen. Or you could call the independent charity Crime Stoppers anonymously. Let me give you their number too. It's 0800 555 111. If you need to see our reconstruction again, it's online, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. Now here's Rav with some people up to no good and caught on camera.
Back in February, we showed you this. CCTV from Hayes and Harlington Station in Middlesex. The man approaches a group of teenagers and asks them to keep the noise down. He's followed down the stairs and stabbed 4 times before falling on the platform. It's unbelievable. Well, luckily the man survived, and someone watching Crimewatch rang with a name. Daniel Broomfield was arrested. He admitted it and has been sent down for 3 years. Tonight, it could be your turn to help. So watch closely, and if you see anyone you recognise, then get on the phone. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and this man's casing the joint outside Costcutters in Tysoe, Warwickshire. He has a look around and tries to force one of the doors. No such luck. Maybe this bloke can help. You could have done your trousers up first, mate. Oh, looks like he's spotted the camera. Give us a smile. No? All right then. It doesn't stop him coming back and trying again. They end up stealing over £4,000 worth of bags and booze. Know 'em, shop 'em. This man's leading an elderly lady into a newsagent's in Sandyway, Cheshire last January. They're heading for the cash point. Police believe he's a bogus workman who's threatened the woman into withdrawing money. He stands over her, and when there's a problem with the machine, even asks the shop staff for help. What a nerve. When the machine finally works, he snatches the money off her. How callous can you get? Who is he? We're on the 142 bus in Edgware, West London, back in October, and a man's chatting away on his mobile, unaware he's being watched. The bloke behind is after his iPhone and will do anything to get it. He watches, bides his time, before pulling out a knife. He grabs the victim, putting the knife to his throat. They struggle. The victim grabs the knife by the blade, slashing his hands. The robber gets what he wants and does a runner. He's prepared to use a knife. Next time, it could be much worse. Let's catch him before he strikes again. 4 robberies at one branch of Lloyd's TSB on Tottenham Court Road, London. Police think one man's behind it.
Spot the difference? This one's from March 2006 and this one's from just last November. Maybe the crash diet is an attempt to throw us off the scent. Each time he tells the cashier he's got a shotgun and demands cash in 20s and 50s. Now Lloyds are offering a 25 grand reward for arrest and conviction. Name please. Now we've just heard he struck a 5th time on Friday. Here he is again at his favourite branch. If you know where he is or indeed any of the people we're after, call us here in the studio. The number's on your screen. Or you can text us on 63399. Just type crime space and then your message. Really important to leave that space or your message won't get through.
Now, if you need a second look at tonight's CCTV, it's online, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch. Now, way back in October, we showed you this. It's two people using a cash point, clearly seen due to cash point cam. Now, at the time, police believed this footage showed two people using a stolen bank card. We received calls naming Val Jones and her son Keith. They were arrested, but as police investigated, they realised Val and Keith were completely innocent. They were not using a stolen card after all. Apologies for any distress that was caused because of that. Now, still ahead, will you know the knife man attacking women in Peterborough? Here's what he did.
Scream, I'll speak to Clark and kill you. And we're joined in the studio by the police officer who survived this horrific attack.
And the extraordinary case of Pierre Williams. That's him there. He murdered his ex-girlfriend and her 2 children. He then meticulously covered his tracks before handing himself in. His challenge to police was, prove I did it or let me go. I'll have the story of this deadly game of cat and mouse and how detectives finally got their man.
So all that is still to come. Next, we are after a gang who chose to ditch the more conventional balaclava for one of these things. It's a gimp mask, pretty unusual, huh? The victims in this case are a Berkshire couple who run a successful local builders merchants. It seems the robbers knew this and had done their homework. They went tooled up for the job and were prepared to stop at nothing to get what they came for. Here's what happened.
One evening in September, 3 young men sprinted along a Berkshire road. They ran several hundred yards before they disappeared. In their hands were blood-stained coches and thousands of pounds of stolen cash. But who were they?
We've had the building supplies about 28, 30 years.
We've got 4 yards, one at Maidenhead, Basingstoke, Guildford, and the Reading one, where we sell bricks, blocks, paving slabs, sand, cement, plasterboard.
Materials.
Yes.
All right, boys, good job. Just finish that off and that'll do then. All right, cheers, lads. Dave, do us a favour, mate, before we turn that off. Can you just grab that pallet down from up there and stick it on the rack for us?
Yeah, no problem.
All right. All right, team, you off?
Yeah, I'm going down Mum and Dad's.
All right. Oh, you got the cash?
Yeah.
All right, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
At the end of the day, the other 3 builders merchants bring their money over, and one of our children would have brought it down to us. Then it would be banked the next day.
Beans on toast all right for tea, love?
Yeah.
Well, we had a big lunch. I shouldn't think you want that much. It was nice to see Tina, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She's looking great. Oh, you get that, love.
Joe got up to answer the door, and then that's when it all happened.
Where's your money? Where's your safe? Where's your money? As they burst in, they was hitting me with a cosh on the top of the head here, and my hand was split down here. There's 3 of them, 2 at my back and 1 at the front. The front one was hitting me, and the other 2 were having a go at the back as well, saying, "Where's the money, you bastard? Where's the money?" And I said, "There ain't none, there ain't none." Then he left me and went in the kitchen.
I was stood doing the toast. The next thing is I heard an almighty bang. I came up the kitchen to see what was going on, and as I did, this bloke came through the kitchen door with a hood on and a great big long truncheon, and I just turned and ran.
Where's the money?
When he hit me across the back of the head, I felt my head burst open, and I was so frightened that he was going to kill me because he hit me with all his might. I couldn't believe how hard he had hit me. I was screaming. And with that he turned and he said to me, "Where's the fucking money, bitch?"
Where is your money? Where is it? Tell me where the money is!
Oh! Oh!
Hazel!
Headquarters, you're through to please. Well, the front doorbell went, then I heard this bang whack, and my husband shouting, and one came in, he whacked me in the face with a cause, then over the head and across the hand.
Oh, God. Meanwhile, the couple's attackers were running down the Basingstoke Road. By this time, we know they'd taken off their masks. They were last seen heading down this road. So, did they have a car around here? Or do they live around here?
Well, at first I wouldn't go out, and Joe didn't go out, and all our doors are padlocked, and really, we were both, I think, really frightened afterwards. But I've decided that I can't let scum like that rule my life.
Strong lady. Well, I'm joined by DC Sally Russell, who's heading up the investigation. Let's first of all talk about these pretty unusual sort of fetish gimp mask things. What can you tell us about those?
A very distinctive mask. Unfortunately, we don't know where they're from. Possibly quite a specialist item that from a shop that you couldn't go to on the high street, perhaps. Okay. But we don't know where you get them from.
Do you think this was something of an inside job, or at least inside information? I mean, they seem to know that there was going to be cash in the house on that particular night.
Well, they knew what they were looking for. It's likely that they spoke about it prior to the offence, but that's why we're appealing for anybody who knows anything to come forward.
What about the way they chose to get away? I mean, 3 guys bombing up this street. Does that suggest local knowledge or the opposite?
It's a very unusual thing to run 200 metres up a road in full view, a main road, especially a bold step after they've committed such a crime with weapons with them and a large amount of cash.
I mean, presumably you're pretty keen to speak to any witnesses if you've seen these 3 guys running hell for leather.
Yeah, but it suggests what they did, that they didn't know the local area by running up such a long road.
Do you reckon the gang will have talked about this?
Absolutely, but they may well have mentioned that they've had a large amount of cash, but not exactly said about the level of violence used.
And
those people we're appealing to, that this may be a step too far, that they'll call in tonight and tell us who they are.
Indeed, I mean, it was horrific. These people were very lucky to have survived. Thanks very much, Sally. It's important to stress, I should tell you this, the family have changed security arrangements. They no longer keep big sums of cash at home. Goes without saying, we do really need to catch this lot before they do it all again. Call us here in the studio if you can help. The number 0500 600 600, or you could call the independent charity Crime Stoppers anonymously. Their number 0800 555 111. Now here's Rav with some faces in the frame.
Now, since our last programme, 5 of our wanted faces have been caught, which is terrific. But let's hope we do even better with his next batch. First up is Kevin McCorkindale. Now, he's wanted for downloading indecent images of children. He was arrested and bailed, but then went on the run. He's considered to be a risk to children. The last sighting of him was leaving his address in Truro, Cornwall, on a black scooter, which has since been found abandoned in Sussex. He's 42 and may also have connections to London. Next is Dion Lee. Now, police believe he's involved in importing drugs, firearms and ammunition into the UK from Amsterdam. He's 32, originally from Lancashire, and we think he's recently been living in Holland. But where is he tonight? Now, it would certainly be sweet if we could find Honey, and that there is Terence Honey. He was arrested for a robbery in October, skipped bail and hasn't been seen since. A court found him guilty in his absence, and he was sentenced to 5 years. Honey's 22 years old and has connections to both Leeds and Birmingham. And my number 4 is Mansour Manafi, and detectives want to speak to him about 2 sexual assaults in Cambridge. Originally from Libya, he has connections to London. So if you can help, don't wait. Phone or text now. The number's on your screen. And these mugshots are also online, by the way, bbc.co.uk/Crimewatch.
Now, May of last year saw some of the worst scenes of violence that Manchester has ever seen. You may well recall the headlines. It was the night of the UEFA Cup final between Rangers and Zenit St. Petersburg. Crowds of, well, so-called football fans went on the rampage. Much of it was caught on CCTV. Just take a little look at this. Now, here you can see a big bunch of fans, a lot of them hooligans, starting to start throwing crates, bottles, whatever they can get their hands on. And there you see that policeman in the centre of the screen is about to be, the guy's going to, just watch, he trips him right up. There he is, he kicks him, brings him down, and remarkably, this policeman manages to struggle to his feet, runs off to the left of the screen there, but just a terrifying incident. Well, tonight, for the first time, detectives are releasing footage of a second attack on a police officer. Indeed, he was lucky to survive. He joins me here now, PC John Goodwin. Evening, John. With him is the man leading the investigation, Detective Superintendent Jeff Wessel. Now, John, I want to ask you to talk us through the footage and tell us what's happening. Just take a look at the screen and tell us you're the policeman at the centre of this, and what's actually happening.
Just at this point on the screen there, I've been taken to the floor by somebody. That's me there.
That's you in the centre of that crowd?
Yeah, being attacked by...
That must have been totally terrifying.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, these guys are absolutely going for it. You can't even imagine what's in their heads, but you must at that point have been thinking that the game was over, surely.
At that point, the so-called fans, as you call them, were trying to get my helmet off. And I knew that if I kept holding my chin strap to keep it on my head, and I knew if they'd have got my helmet off, I probably wouldn't have been here today.
So you were fighting for your life at that moment?
Well, I thought my life was ending just at that point, yeah.
I mean, I know you're a very experienced police officer, but how does it feel to watch that?
It's a bit disturbing, to be honest. It's not something that I like to watch.
And I know you've had an experience before of crowds around you, but it's very difficult for anybody, first of all, who's not a police officer, and secondly, who's never been in a situation like that, to imagine what's going on. I mean, what actually was going through your head? Can you remember?
Well, I think mostly the feeling of being helpless and not being able to do anything.
Just the terror of that. I mean, you say you were holding on to the chin strap there, keeping your helmet on.
Yeah.
Doubtless that saved your life, but you were really badly injured.
Yeah.
Tell me about your injuries.
Well, I was knocked unconscious at some point in there, and I ended up with a brain injury.
You had a sort of swelling in your
bruising and swelling to my brain, yeah, which only showed up a day or two later.
You're back working now, and we're very glad to hear that, and I'm glad to have you here tonight. Jeff, as I said, you're leading the investigation. I mean, it is truly a shocking instance, this.
Absolutely terrifying, and for John and the other officers on the ground that day, what they went through, they shouldn't have faced that sort of level of violence and attacks against officers.
I mean, the outcome could have been, it was bad enough, but it could have been so much worse. What are you looking at there? Are you looking at organised groups of people who went out there with the intention of attacking anyone, maybe especially police officers?
I don't know if it was organised as in groups purposely attacking police officers, but they were definitely fuelled by large amounts of alcohol and had, for whatever reason, and there is no excuse, has just decided to go on the rampage.
If anyone watching tonight, watching Crimewatch, was involved in this attack, what would you say to them?
If they're involved, come forward, volunteer and come forward to a police station, because we will find them. And members of the public, look at our website, look at the images and give us names for these individuals.
Well, indeed, we've got images of 7 people specifically involved in these attacks. We're going to show you them one by one. Do look closely. If you recognise anyone, do the right thing and call. So that's just 7 of them, but we think there are as many as 50 people involved in the violence on the night. You'll find more of those faces that we are very keen to trace online, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. Thank you to you both very much for joining us. Thank you for sharing what I know was, the most appalling thing to talk about. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for that, John. Now, here's Rav with news on some recent cases.
Now, we get some really good calls already on that Linda Farrar cold case murder. Remember, it's 30 years old. More on that later. Now, last month, we showed you CCTV of a pensioner being mugged in the Gents, Elephant and Castle. The poor bloke was grabbed by the cubicles and ended up on the floor, and all for just a few quid. Well, someone watching recognised the thug, and a man has now been arrested and charged.
And good news about this chap, Martin Lacey. A year ago, we appealed for him after he slashed his ex-partner's throat. Well, following our appeal, he handed himself in and admitted the attack. He's now in custody and will be sentenced next week.
Now, last month, we showed you this. A man walks into a shop in Camberwell in south-east London. For no apparent reason, the shopkeeper gets bashed over the head with a metal bar. Well, following your calls, police traced him. Here he is. It's Hani Shabana. He admitted it and was sent down for 3 years.
And this is 17-year-old Annika Pinto. A year and a half ago, she was shot dead in a London pub after a row broke out. Following our appeal, Tristan Walker was arrested. Now, he claimed the gun went off by accident. The jury was having none of it. And last week, he was sentenced to life.
Well, we know what our next criminal looks like because this is him. And we know what he smells like. Cheap aftershave, lovely. But who is he? Well, he hangs out in Peterborough and has struck twice in as many months. The fear is that if he's not caught soon, he will strike again. There are lots of strong clues, so watch closely, and if you can help, we need to hear from you.
This is the crime scene. It's November last year, just after midnight. It was a deliberate, premeditated attack. We don't know how far the offender was prepared to go. What we do know is the victim was terrified.
I just want to go home.
Come on, don't blow that.
No, because you said you would and you didn't. I just want to go home. Speak to you tomorrow.
Scream, I'll split your throat and kill you. In building a profile, we look at everything. We look at geography. He may attack within his comfort zone at first. Does he work around here, or does he live around here? Do you know someone who was out that night? Unfortunately, we believe the same man attacked again.
Right, I'm going to let you out here. We'd been shopping and we came home and there wasn't a place on the street to park. So I went and parked at the next street, the adjacent street, locked the car up, started to walk up the street.
Come with me. I've got a knife.
he could smell drink from his breath, so he'd obviously been drinking. So, you know, for a second it doesn't register, but that's really happening to you, but I was absolutely terrified.
Come with me, I'm going to kill you.
Well, I thought, I've got to get away. The guy was telling me that I've got to come with him because he's going to kill me, so, you know, I was trying to sort of like fight the instinct not to keep looking at the knife, because obviously he could have stuck that knife in me at any time, couldn't he?
You understand? I've got a knife. You've got to come with me. I'm going to kill you.
I was really thinking then, I'm not going to get away from this guy because he's just so determined. I'm not going to get away.
Leave me alone. I'm going to kill you.
I think at one point he was behind me, but I was trying not to focus and think of him being behind me, just to focus on actually getting through that door, which very luckily I managed to do. When I actually got in the house and shut the door and phoned the police, and he was still stood outside on the street, he hadn't gone away.
He's showing more confidence. Look at the location, it's overlooked on both sides. He's also more determined. This time, he wasn't going to let his victim get away. He's prepared to use physical violence to get what he wants.
I don't think we really feel safe there anymore, and I would think in the very near future that we'll move from there. It terrifies me, the thought that he's out there now. You know, I find myself looking at people in the street that really just terrify me.
My main concern is that this man could attack again, and next time his victim may not get away.
I was very lucky and I managed to get away, but he did seem very focused on what he wanted to do. And if somebody else is not so lucky and doesn't manage to get away, what's going to happen to them?
Good question. Well, I'm joined by DS Rob Hall. Rob, obviously entirely terrifying for those two women. What do you think the guy's aims were?
Well, very terrifying attacks on both occasions. On both occasions, he's attacked women from behind using a knife. So we keep an open mind as to what his motive is, but we are considering the possibility of a sexual motive. He has, on the first attack, attempted to pull the victim's trousers down, which is obviously very concerning. She said herself she thought she was going to be raped.
Okay. I mean, he seems to have taken some considerable risk in terms of the location. What does that tell you?
He has. Well, I don't think he's prepared it that well. He's looked at the locations. They're overlooked on both sides, the built-up areas. I mean, I don't know what he was expecting to do, but there was a chance he was going to be discovered at any time.
And what about the fact that repeatedly he was threatening to kill these women?
Well, the fact he's done that is very persistent, really worries me. The fact that anybody who's making those comments and using a knife and threatening in that way is somebody we need to get hold of. And that's what we're hoping the various items we've got and the various leads we've got may be able to jog people's memories.
Yeah, I mean, you've got quite good leads on this. Talk us through this.
Well, this is described as a vintage Adidas jacket. We had some trouble getting hold of this, an electric blue one.
Right.
We don't think this is available anymore. So we're hoping that's quite distinctive, especially the white zip.
Yeah.
That, again, is quite distinctive in that range.
Okay, and also, now these just look like a pair of black gloves, but actually interestingly, your investigation has found there's a lot more to them than that. Explain.
It is, yeah. We've had to have these made up because we haven't been able to track down the Elite brand of gloves. We know some companies do make Elite gloves, but don't actually have it written on there. So we're hoping that, being distinctive, may jog somebody's memory with the other items and may lead us to the person looking for.
Okay, so that's the items he was wearing. What about the man himself? Tell us about his description.
Well, the victim certainly, on the first attack, has been able to prepare this artist's impression. She's described as an Asian male, between 20 and 30, about 5'10" to 6 foot tall. And again, we know on the fact that they've got the smell of aftershave and alcohol as well.
Okay, Rob, thanks very much for that. If you can help, do call or text us on this. The numbers are right there on the screen. If you've been a victim of crime, there is the victim support line. They're on 0845 30 30 900. Now here's Rav with some more of the UK's most wanted.
I've already got some really promising calls on the first batch, so let's see if you know where this next lot are hiding. Number 5 is where Hinmi met Sagoran, and police want to speak to him in connection with the murder of his mother, Rose Jatto. She was found stabbed to death at her home in Camberwell earlier this month. He was last seen getting off the 104 bus in High Street South, East Ham, on the 4th of January. He's in his 20s, 5'11", and sometimes goes by the name Emmanuel. Police think he may be sleeping rough. Number 6 is Tian Zhao, wanted in connection with a large-scale people trafficking operation. He has associates within London's Chinese community and may be going by a different name. He also likes to hang out in casinos. Number 7 is Michael Clark. Police are keen to interview him about a kidnap and robbery in County Down, Northern Ireland in May. He's 28, originally from Belfast, but also has links to Downpatrick. And last, but by no means least, is number 8, Gary Finley. Now, police want to speak to him about the murder of Graham McKenna and the stabbing of his 14-year-old son just 3 weeks ago. Finley's 46 and has links to Prenton in Merseyside and the southwest. So it's time this lot crawled out of the woodwork. So if you've seen them, help us nail them. Call now. Or you can text us on 63399, just type crime, space, and then your message. Don't forget to leave that space, or your message won't get through.
Now, this man here is Danny King, or Sheps, he was known to his friends, a 51-year-old father of 4. He was murdered in his own home in Ditton in Kent back in October. While the rest of the family slept, he was shot 4 times. Well, with me is DCI John Bumpus, who's leading the investigation. I mean, what possible reason could there be for this man being shot?
I'm open-minded as to the motive behind Danny's murder. Just after 3 a.m. on Friday the 17th of October, Danny was shot 4 times while he slept in his home. His wife, son and young grandchildren were all asleep in bedrooms close by. Danny didn't have a chance. I'm hoping that somebody's going to contact the programme this evening and tell me why Danny was murdered and who shot him.
OK, let's look at some of the possible clues. You've got some interesting CCTV footage here. This is of a car that comes, we see it just coming into the right of the frame here. Explain to us why this is important.
This is a Peugeot 207 Cabriolet Coupe. That's a hard-top convertible car. It's not clear from the footage what the colour is, but we know it's not a white car. This car arrives in New Road, Ditton, about half an hour before Danny is murdered. And it's possible it's a stolen car, and I'm particularly interested in 2 stolen Cabriolet Coupes that were stolen in the days leading up to Danny's murder. Okay. The first one was stolen during a burglary at a house in Lambeth, and that was found burnt out in a street in Croydon exactly 24 hours after Danny was murdered. The second one was stolen during a burglary in Dartford, and to date that one hasn't been recovered.
OK, so let us know if you know where that car is. Now, let's look at the next piece of CCTV. The reason that the car is interesting is because of what happens next. What do we see here?
About half an hour after the car arrives in New Road, and immediately after Danny's been shot, these 2 figures emerge from the direction of Danny's house, run out of Medina Road and cross to the Peugeot. OK, now there is another, you think, a key witness who was in the area at the time. Tell me about them. This is a man who's walking past a chip shop in London Road, Ditton, about 2:30 in the morning. Now, it's possible that he may have seen the Peugeot we're looking for. OK. If you were in that area at that time, in the early hours of Friday the 17th of October, I'd urge you please contact the incident.
OK, John, thanks very much for that. If you can help, then do call or text us now. The numbers are right there on your screen, or you could call the independent charity Crime Stoppers anonymously, 0800 555 111. Right, it's time now for a behind-the-scenes look at how detectives caught this man here. He is Pierre Williams. Well, he murdered his ex-girlfriend and her 2 children. He then tried to meticulously cover his tracks before handing himself in. His challenge to the police was, prove I did it or let me go. It was a race against time, but detectives did prove that he was guilty. Matthew's been to Manchester to find out how.
Is there anything you want to say, Pierre?
I haven't raped no one at all. I haven't killed no one. I don't know nothing about it.
He was sitting there, looking at my officers in the face, and in effect saying to them, if you think I'm guilty, prove it.
It was a crime that shocked hardened police officers and from which friends and relatives of the victims will never recover. One July night in 2007, an entire family was bludgeoned to death. Police would have described the murders of Beverly Samuels and her 2 teenage children as near executions.
Well, the scene itself was quite horrific. You've got a mother and her 2 children have been brutally murdered in their own home. You've got Beverly here. She's got her eldest, Keisha, and she was studying law and had a really bright future ahead of her. And then the youngest, 13 years old, Fred, just a real benign soul, really, and a really nice little family unit. It was quite clear from the outset there'd been a high level of violence and they'd been bludgeoned to death with something that was particularly substantial and heavy. And in fact, subsequently we found out that it was this £3 engineer's ball peen hammer that had been used to kill all three.
The two women were sexually assaulted, is that right?
The women had been quite viciously sexually violated, yes.
And what about Fred?
I'm certain that Fred had been murdered purely because he was a potential witness against the murderer. The murderer saw him as a threat to him and cold-bloodedly bludgeoned him to death with that hammer.
Keith, so what have you got?
Upstairs, we've got one deceased female.
Have you looked downstairs?
Yeah.
The person who did this is called Pierre Williams.
And who are you, love?
I'm a neighbour, but Pierre Williams was here last night.
Pierre Williams?
Pierre Williams.
All right. I'll tell you what, love. Let's go and have a chat about it. You can tell me all about it.
Pierre Williams was an ex-boyfriend of Beverly Samuels and had been at the house the previous evening. Now, he was nowhere to be seen. If he was the killer, then he was an extremely dangerous man. He needed to be found, and found quickly. Because lives were at risk, police took the very unusual step of going public.
In the past few minutes, police in Manchester have named a man they want to question over the murders of a woman and her 2 teenage children. The man named is Pierre Williams. Police say he should not be approached.
What happened next took police completely by surprise.
Police emergency.
Yeah, I've been on the news today saying I'm a suspect for the murder inquiry.
What's your name?
Pierre Williams. That's what the police were coming to see me now, so I can sort it all out.
The last person police were expecting to hear from was Williams. But within hours of the appeal going out, he'd handed himself in and was arrested.
Can you give me your full name and date of birth, please?
Pierre Williams, 14 for the 1274.
Okay, thanks.
So you got to interview him. What was he like in interview?
When somebody gives themselves in, you expect them to come forward and give a version of events, to explain why they were there.
And he wasn't doing that?
He wasn't doing that.
One thing, Pierre. If the cops have got it all wrong, if we're barking up the wrong tree, if you're the wrong man, I need to drop you like a hot potato and go out chasing the real bad guy. Can you at least deny being involved in this?
No comment.
What do you say, Pierre?
No comment.
What was he effectively trying to do in that interview, you think?
He knows we've got an absolute maximum of 92 hours. So we get him on Saturday morning, we've got him till Tuesday night.
Williams' plan was breathtakingly audacious. He was going to stonewall every question put to him and gamble police wouldn't find enough evidence in time to charge him with the murders. He knew that without evidence, they could only hold him for a maximum of 92 hours. Once released, he could flee the country, or worse, kill again.
The pathologist is on standby.
Williams had forced detectives onto the back foot. It can take weeks to gather, process and analyse evidence from a crime scene. So, with less than 3 days before they would have to release him, police had to move fast.
Well, come on then, let's get on with it.
So because Williams could claim he had a legitimate reason to be in the house, you had to find evidence that was crime-specific, didn't you?
Well, that's exactly the right way of describing it. Williams knew full well he had legitimate access to the house. He could explain being there. What we did find out, the more research we did into him, he'd been an ex-member of the Gooch gang. One of his roles had been to clean up after the scenes. He'd become very forensically aware and quite certain that he used that knowledge to tidy up the scene.
Yeah, boss. You won't believe it. No fingerprints, no trace blood in the sinks.
So did he leave anything? Did he make any mistakes?
He did. We found, in the bedroom, a footwear mark in the victim's blood.
Well, we'll have something back at the lab with you as soon as possible.
So you had a footprint that you could link directly to the murder scene, the crime scene, not just the house?
Yes, that could only have been left by the murderer.
If detectives could prove the footprint in blood was from Williams, they could charge him with the murders. They desperately needed to search his flat for his shoes, but Williams had no intention of telling them his address.
What is your current address, Pierre? No comment. Do you have an address? No comment.
Williams must have thought his plan was working. He'd been in custody for 3 days. In just over 24 hours, he'd be free to go. Detectives urgently needed a breakthrough. It came on Monday afternoon.
Oh, Mr. Foster, please. Yeah, just to let you know, I'm just going through his text. I think I found an address for Williams over in Birmingham.
Right, I want CID.
Officers were immediately sent to search Williams' flat.
I'm relying on that, thanks.
But again, he was one step ahead of police. Before handing himself in, he'd got rid of the shoes. Straight line thinking had clearly hit the buffers. So what was the plan then?
Well, we sat down around the table and spent some time trying to think just exactly where we're going to get this evidence from. And we came up with the plan that if we could find a footwear mark in Pierre Williams's home address that matched the footwear mark at the scene of the murder, we'll have got that jigsaw fit. We'll have got him and linked him to the scene of the crime as well.
What Williams didn't know was he could have left latent footprints invisible to the naked eye in his flat. Forensic scientists spent Tuesday painstakingly searching every inch of Williams' floor. By this stage, there were only hours before he'd have to be released.
Get on to Ian Foster, tell him we've got a print, then call Chorley FSS, tell him we're on our way.
The gel lift was rushed from Birmingham to Chorley, where forensic scientists raced against the clock to provide confirmation that the prints came from the same shoe.
So what did you actually do? Well, the starting point is quite clearly to look to see that the pattern is in fact the same, when it is. They're both a Timberland Fleet Trekker sole, but beyond that, they're both actually the same size.
By this time we're into Tuesday evening, and I have to say I'm beginning a little bit fraught. Are we going to get this result in the time we need to get it in, or am I going to be faced with the awful prospect of him walking out of the doors?
Hello, Tom, yeah, it's Ian Foster here. Have you got anything yet? Nothing. Hey, okay.
At what stage did you realise you had a match?
Well, the shoes are worn. They tend to get damaged just by general sort of wear and tear. As they become damaged, they pick up their own unique character. And what we've got here is a close-up version looking at the mark in blood at the scene, the lace-up mark from Birmingham, and this is an enhanced or enlarged image, and on block from block we have the same defect occurring. We'd assess the evidence as being extremely strong scientific evidence to say that the mark that was made in blood at the murder scene was made by one and the same shoe as the mark that made a latent print in Pierre Williams' flat.
Yeah, Foster. Tom. Great. That is great.
And when the call came, what was that like?
Absolute relief. I can't tell you the relief. My real fear in all this was knowing full well how dangerous he was, that we would have tried our best, failed, he'd have gone out and murdered somebody else. I really would have had difficulty living with myself after that.
Pierre Williams, you're charged that between the 11th and 12th of July 2007 at Fallowfield, Manchester, you murdered Beverly Samuels.
With less than 3 of his 92 hours left on the clock, Pierre Williams was charged with the murders of Beverly, Keisha and Fred, and remanded in custody. He thought he was cleverer than the system. He wasn't. His gamble had failed. At trial, Williams was given 3 life sentences with a minimum tariff of 38 years.
Well, my first thought is he'll be an old man when he comes out, if he ever does come out. And I have to say I think that's right and proper. But my thoughts really go out to the family of Beverly, Keisha and Fred. I think Pierre Williams has got everything he deserves.
3 lives ended so savagely. Matthew, what on earth was the motive?
Well, he had a history of sexual violence against women. He'd been charged with rape before, and that undoubtedly was the motive here. I mean, he'd had a relationship with Beverly back in 2005. It had finished. There was still some sort of contact between them occasionally, and police believe he'd gone to the house, she'd rebuffed his advances, he'd gone away, then gone back, and this time he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He wasn't drunk, he wasn't high on drugs, he was simply intent on doing what he did, and he used extraordinary levels of sadistic violence. He knew exactly what he wanted to do.
Did he offer any sort of defence in court?
Well, you saw there how cocky he was in the police interviews, but once he was trapped by that brilliant forensic evidence, then his story became that he had consensual sex with both women, both mother and daughter, on the same night. And as outrageous as that claim was, and it simply added to the distress of the relatives listening to that in the court, he then went on to say he heard a loud knock at the front door. That had scared him. He'd gone to the garden. That person at the door had carried out the murders. He'd gone back, found the bodies, panicked and run away. I mean, frankly, it was unbelievable and nobody believed it.
As you said earlier, I mean, he was playing cat and mouse with the police on this. Did the game ever come to an end?
Yeah, the mask dropped, the facade cracked. Right at the moment, the foreman on the jury said the word guilty. Then he flipped. I mean, all manner of abuse he flung at jurors. He had to be restrained physically by 3 court officials. And it was interesting because in his evidence, in his bluffing, he had actually said whoever had carried out these crimes was an absolute animal. And the judge used that exact phrase as he gave him those 3 life sentences.
A horror story. Thank you very much, Matthew. Now, here's Rav with what's coming in on the phones tonight.
And the phones have been nice and busy, which I like. We'll start off with that Berkshire attack in the home of that poor couple where the offenders wore those bizarre fetish-style masks. Lots of calls on that. In fact, over 50 and rising all the time. Lots of information about those masks. We don't really want any more on that unless you can directly link it to the offence. 8 names suggested for the offenders, though, which is good. Then Linda Farrow, the murder, which is 30 years old. 30-year-old case, but we've still had 13 calls, lots of information, new leads potentially, and 2 names given. All in all, a good night.
Thanks, Ravel. That's all for now. Details on all of tonight's cases are online, bbc.co.uk/crimewatch. You can log on now for a live update on what's happening right here on the phones. I can tell you it has been a particularly busy night. The lines are open until midnight tonight and from 7:30 tomorrow morning. Our next programme, well, that's on Thursday, the 26th of February. Don't go away, because we are back later with a full update on tonight's cases. If you can help, but you haven't called yet, please do it now. It could all be down to you. I'll see you after the news, but for now, bye-bye.